The infernal side of sorcery is a pathway to many abilities some would consider unnatural. I intend to follow this path. The rules are simple. If it doesn't explode, ignite, or resemble Rogar Arson in some capacity, we're not allowed to use it. That means no melee, no throwables, and no solving our problems like normal people. But that doesn't mean other weapons will be completely useless to us. We are a smart cultist after all, so we grab our catalyst because obviously we chose the pirate cultist class, embrace religious extremism, and head off to see just how long Mornstead can survive a man throwing fireballs at literally everything that moves. Speaking of the catalyst, our main tool of destruction is the Pirate Cultist Catalyst, a lovely piece of technology. Could probably use a mana cure, but in this economy, that ain't happening. Paired with this is the Infernal Orb, cheap, quick, effective at destruction, just like throwing a laced ounce into a mosh pit. Now, as somebody whose usual strategy involves aggressively standing next to the enemy and hitting R1 until one of us dies, adapting to sorcery took some getting used to, because casting in Lords of the Fallen isn't instant. First, you pull out the Catalyst, then you cast the spell, then your character remembers they have elbows, and then the fireball actually leaves their hand. Meaning every encounter quickly becomes less powerful Infernal Overlord and more panicked arsonist backpedaling for his life. However, on the positive side, a lot of bosses will use the strategy of just menacingly walking towards you the moment you use anything even remotely ranged. It's almost as if it makes things easy. Who would have thought? But with Otto burned, Piotr joined him soon after, utilizing a very similar tactic of menacingly floating. Maybe they like the pain, I mean it does kind of fit with the Hallowed Sentinel's theme. But we do have access to the hub area now, which is great because this means the world is open to us, and the first thing we're going to go do is free the tortured prisoner, not because we're a good Samaritan, no, she has infernal goodies. And having said that out loud, I realize that could be interpreted in so many ways. Now, it's pretty easy to free her, you just give her the two fingers and, well, she becomes a merchant. It just makes sense. With her infernal goodies available to us, we can start becoming a true Rogar Lord, as well as having a collecting hobby on the side. It's good to ground yourself with something. Of course, every respectable cult leader needs a ceremonial weapon, so we picked up the trusty cutter. It scales with Inferno, looks deeply unsanitary, and probably gives nearby enemies tetanus through spiritual damage alone. Now technically, we can't use it against bosses, but we can attach runes to it, which might help us out. The next main thing we'll need is a smith, and there's only one in the lands of Mornstead. Honestly, probably the best trade work to get into in this economy would be absolutely raking in the gold. To get there, we need to get through Delphine. She's a screamer, but that's our style. She does cover distances a bit better than the previous bosses, more of a runway menacing walk, but our tactic of standing far away and throwing stuff at them seems to still be working a treat. We also met Damaros here, the other important merchant for us on our journey through Mornstead. We freed Galinda and got our catalyst a bit of a mana cure, and also this means we can upgrade our melee weapon so we can attach some runes to it. But with the world open to us, a smith and two merchants available, our true journey can begin. Now up until this point, the bosses have been easy. They've all been melee users who don't understand what that means. The G-Sister, on the other hand, has ranged weaponry and a pack of dogs. Quite the contest, Radiant Sorcery versus Inferno Sorcery. This fight was significantly less cooperative than the others. Turns out trying to cast Infernal Sorceries while being chased by a bunch of Get Down Mr. President dogs and Holy Artillery Fire is a surprisingly stressful experience. Every time I stopped moving to cast, the G-Sister immediately responded by filing a formal complaint directly into my spine. This leads to problem number one for this pathway, ranged bosses. Spoiler alert, there's two other problems as well. The next boss is right around the corner, the Pound of Flesh, a boss that could clearly work as a found footage director because the worst thing about this fight is the camera work. Luckily, due to this boss's size and his complete disrespect for personal spaces, we don't really have to aim at all, just fling the spells and they'll connect. A messy victory, but sometimes that's what you need. Unfortunately, the bosses from this point forward began developing something called mobility, which as it turns out is extremely bad news for an infernal cultist who throws spells like he's Oprah giving out gifts to the audience. The swamps are always a lovely place, and the silent Gyoba Masataka Oniwa is waiting for us, a boss that has actual mobility and uses his melee weapon in more ways than one. Now luckily this boss is weak to fire, which was nice, because if this game starts introducing fire resistant bosses, our entire religion immediately collapses, but we won't worry about that for now because ignorance is bliss. We go take a look at the beacon to make sure it's still doing okay and truly serving the purpose of a deer. We will be disappointing the moths in our lamp today. Now we need some upgrade materials for our weapon, and there's one easy spot where we can get them, the Gorge of Roy. To get them, we need to deal with the Crimson Rector. Now the Crimson Rector discovered a revolutionary new defensive strategy against infernal sorcery, walking slightly to the side. He also has a healing mechanic, but it wasn't exactly problematic. He can only tank so many fireballs to the face. With him out the way, we can grab our loot to upgrade our catalyst. The Ruiner is already a firm believer in Infernal doctrine, but as is expected, we all hate each other, so we had to show them our superior firepower. It's also just rude charging a toll to cross the bridge, especially to fellow Infernal believers, and unfortunately, the Ruiner introduces problem number 2 for our Infernal pilgrimage, fire-resistant bosses, because sadly, they do exist. Sauron's #1 fan is in the wrong universe, so we made sure they found the way back to the correct one. They did have some good fashion sense, so we may have taken their clothing, but the infernal flames will keep them warm, don't worry. Also, another fire-resistant boss, by the way. This is becoming a pattern. We need to deal with the spurned progeny in Kalrath. Yes, they're also on the infernal pathway, but playing with dolls just isn't a good look for the company, so we have to deal with it. It's just business, no hard feelings. Plus, we need their eyeball, because apparently the prisoner wants that. I'm not going to ask why. We already gave them 2 fingers, now an eyeball. I really don't need the details. Some questions are best left unanswered. Now, technically, the spurned progeny is also resistant to fire, which at this point was starting to feel less like coincidence and more like targeted discrimination against my religion. Luckily, the fight itself is gimmicky enough that this oversized furnace mascot eventually went down without too much trouble. Problem number 3 arrives in the form of the Skin Lover. Small arena, fast boss, very limited room to panic. The Skin Lover is just a minor inconvenience since they're just a mini boss, but they still needed to be defeated to access Upper Kalrath, where another beacon awaits for us. Of course, we can just completely ignore it for now because there is no boss here, which leaves us 2 choices. First choice is we can go to the Fife of the Chill Curse, which sounds lovely for our fire-based skills, or go through Pilgrim's Perch to the land of Holy Corrupted Radiance. For now, we'll take the Fife because within its icy lands is my least favorite boss and one that could make me doubt the ways of infernal sorcery. You'd think an infernal cultist wielding enough firepower to cremate a village wouldn't struggle in a frozen wasteland. You'd be wrong. The Crow, the bird who just sits there, is a total gimmick fight of a boss. With enemies constantly spawning, ranged attacks flying across the arena, and dogs attempting to remove my kneecaps every 6 seconds, this fight completely dismantled my usual strategy. Normally, infernal sorcery works because enemies politely walk towards you while being set on fire. Well, not in this fight. Every attempt quickly devolved into complete chaos as I desperately sprinted around the arena trying to cast spells before another frostbitten crack addict launched themselves directly at me. I was completely out of my element here. Eventually, after slowing down the pace of combat to something medically approved for senior citizens, the Crow finally went down. And honestly, after that disaster, dealing with radiant lunatics suddenly sounded refreshing. If we're going to conquer the rest of Mondstadt and earn the complete and undivided love of Adir, we need upgrades. Actual upgrades. Turns out the tortured prisoner had been holding out on us because alongside her usual infernal nonsense, she also sells equipment that massively boosts our mana regeneration and spell damage. Meaning, for the first time in the run, our fireballs stopped feeling like mildly offensive suggestions and started feeling like genuine acts of terror. A quick trip through the depths also gave us enough materials that we were missing to fully upgrade our catalyst, and a lovely fashion statement in the form of the Hysteria pendant, so by the time we emerged from the underground, our humble little cultist had officially evolved into a full-scale infernal disaster. Holy Land, here we come. First up is the bellboy, who seems to have gone for the old tactic of menacingly walking. I mean, it's totally his choice, but with that approach, we are quickly on our way. Next up is Sinisho, and fire is probably the best thing to go for here because burning away the absolute stench that follows him around needs an ungodly amount of flames, and also add another to the list that uses menacing walks as their tactic. Also, we picked up a rune that gives us even more mana regeneration. We slapped that on a shield, which can just look good on our backs. The arts and crafts, Mr. Tancred, is in the basement, which is a fitting place for him, a pretty slow boss as well, nothing our fireballs can't handle. His brother Reginald is fire resistant but isn't very bright, so with enough fireballs thrown at his distorted body, we can check that the beacon is okay and move on. My least favorite enemy in the game are the beamers, but surprisingly, with our infernal sorceries, this fight is an absolute breeze now. We don't have to worry about her teleporting or her bleed attacks, just fling fireballs from afar and watch her burn. This was a joy to do. We find in the depths of the Holy Land the sacred artifact of Adir, his very own rune. Honestly, not much better than what Tancred created in the basement, but you know, this one is glowy. The Huntress tries to stop us from taking it, but after a few fireballs, she understands reason and drops dead. Judge Cleric attempts to overwhelm us with radiant magic, holy illusions, and considerably more mobility than previous bosses, but unfortunately for her, infernal sorcery operates on a very advanced tactical principle. Throw enough fireballs and eventually the problem stops moving. Her true form is resistant to fire, but clearly she had an existential crisis because mid-fight she just gave up. Well, we don't give up, have some more fireballs. The last beacon is ours. Head in to tell Adir himself of our success. We run into the Light Reaper, a very fast and once again fire-resistant boss. We had to be a bit more patient in this fight, but the Crow taught us well. After enough fire thrown back at them, we can move on. The Iron Wayfarer tries to stop us, but unfortunately for him, we got the rune, so he only has his pathetic Wither Hammer. It's excellent at giving us zero visibility, and paired with the smallest arena in the game, it's one hell of a mess, but nothing that our fireballs can't handle. Into the castle we go to personally annoy the king into fighting us. Now, unfortunately for us, the king is highly resistant to fire, extremely mobile, armed with ranged attacks, and built like a cathedral, meaning this fight took a while. But after enough infernal artillery fire launched directly into the royal bloodline, the king did finally go down, and we get to meet Adir himself, who immediately rewards our loyalty by making us do an ungodly amount of backtracking that I had completely erased from my memory. I'm not sure who told these enemies we were coming, but clearly there's still someone in the chain of command who hasn't lost it. After corrupting the beacons even further and slipping directly into Judge Cleric's mind through methods I neither understand nor intend to question, we show her Adir's rune, which she seems surprisingly enthusiastic about. And just like that, Adir receives a brand new human form to conquer Mornstead with. Turns out, nobody expects the innocent flower girl.